The 10-minute rule: own the first 10 minutes, own the money. Now, because every single call that you take is essentially a frame fight, right? If you win the frame in those first 10 minutes, you walk away with control, authority, and eventually the cash. If you lose it, you're just another vendor who's chasing invoices. So these then are the 5 steps that make the 10-minute rule work, and the 5 things you have to establish in the mind of the person that you're speaking to have success. And so these are 5 precise moves that build trust, drop resistance, and flip any call in your favor. So if you hit these 5, and those first 10 minutes can actually be worth 12 grand a month quite easily. If you miss them, you'll lose the deal before it even starts. So now let's together break down how to use that 10-minute rule to take control and authority of any call, whether it's a sales call, onboarding call, or just a general business conversation. Now, with that said, my name is Jay Cruz, and I help agencies to scale super quickly, build recurring income. The first slide you can see, of course, this is the authority switch framework. So you can master the first 15 minutes of any client call, transform how prospects, customers, stakeholders perceive your expertise. This is a proven 5-step system that I've implemented over the last sort of 10 to 12 years to close countless sales, but also to help us to generate $100,000 to $150,000 a year clients, and how we went from $60,000 a month in 6 months, and how we scaled to that. And now well over $100,000 in the last, I'd say, 12 months. All right. So check this out. So the important thing here is you want to position yourself as a strategic leader, not just another salesperson. All right. So why do the first 10 minutes define everything? Should be pretty straightforward, but I'll show you and I'll talk about it. So research has shown that trust and authority are established within the first few minutes of any interaction. You may have heard of this before, right? Or be aware of this, I should say. If you miss this window, you'll spend the rest of the call fighting uphill to regain that control and regain that credibility. The authority switch framework is tried, it's tested year after year, and it's been, used in the trenches, on the battlefield, in order to win these clients by winning the trust. And the main thing we want to do is increase trust and drop resistance as quickly as possible. If you can do those 2 things, a lot of people try and do them one at a time, or let's build some trust and then we'll lower resistance. I'm like, nah, screw that. We want to build that trust and lower resistance, bang, at the same time, right? And it is possible, and this is how you do it in these 5 steps. So what we're going to do is we're going to be triggering 5 specific perceptions in your prospect or whoever you're speaking to's mind. That number 1, you're calm, you're confident, you're excited, you're sharp, and you're an expert. I'll go into these in detail. Each element builds on the last, creates an unstoppable momentum almost that positions you as a strategic partner that they need. I repeat, not that they want, that they need. And if they know they need you, they're going to want you anyway, right? So whether you're running a sales discovery call, leading a customer through onboarding, or conducting, quarterly business reviews, or just speaking to a stakeholder, having a quick conversation, whatever it might be, these 5 switches transform how clients experience your leadership from the very first moment. 10 minutes or 10 to 15 minutes, 5 signals. Let's go. All right. Right. These are the 5 things you want to demonstrate in the person's mind straight away. Number 1, you're very calm and you can command through composure. This is key. Because if you think of any great leader, if you think of any great expert, I always think of a spinal surgeon or a brain surgeon, right? If they're not calm in their interaction with you in the beginning, when you're having the consultation, you're not it's not likely going to go with that expert, right? Because if you have expertise, you're calm because you do this all the time, right? Whereas someone who's doing this for the first time or has just recently picked this up, what will they be? They'll naturally be very, nervous or not really sure what they're doing. And that shows, right? No matter what you do, that shows. So this is how you sort of cover that off. Number 1, and a lot of people are starting out with agencies, or you might not have done calls before, or you might be a little bit nervous doing calls despite having done it for a long time. This will nice and easily set you up to do any call that you want with that authority. Okay. So it's like a cheat sheet. And it transforms, I've seen it transform people before my very eyes, right? So start with the rapport switch. A lot of people think rapport is just about, how's the weather, and you're building that trust. Where are you from, and all that kind of bullshit. But actually, rapport for me is just a tool. It's a stepping stone. I need to establish rapport so I can do what I call the rapport switch. If I don't establish that rapport, I can't do the switch, and therefore I can't demonstrate that I'm calm, right? And so a quick example of that, and this is a very important sort of strategy that I've implemented over the years, and you'll see anybody who's who's very smart do this, right? Is they will do the rapport switch in a way like this. So for example, where are you from? And yes, again, that's not designed to, oh, let's just make small talk so that they like me. It's more, I want to set this up and I'll show you what I mean. So how's your week been, right? Where are you from? That kind of stuff. And you might talk for about, 2-3 minutes. Oh, I'm from LA, or I'm from, New Jersey, or I'm from New York, whatever it might be, right? Okay, great. How long have you lived there? Blah, blah, blah. The standard, small talk bullshit. How's the weather there? Ha, ha, ha. The weather changes every 5 minutes, whatever, right? Now, I do that so that I can get to the switch bit. And this is so key, because what I'll do then is I'll be like, okay, great. So let's get on with it, shall we? Because we've got a lot of important stuff to go through. So let's do this. So that pivot allows you see the energy change? It might be, it might sound subtle and obvious, but no one really does this in an effective manner that I've seen. Well, those who struggle with this definitely don't do this, right? And you'll see masters of language, of oratory, of speeches, they do this all the time. And that switch is key because it shows someone you know what you're doing, you're nice and calm, and you've built you've done that switch in a beautiful way. So the energy now is all geared towards getting shit done, right? And that makes you the leader straight away. Now, a lot of calls you may have noticed, what will tend to happen is people go on with the rapport way too long because they think, oh yeah, a lot of sales leaders I've seen talk about this and say, oh, if they're talking, keep them talking, right? And I think that's a massive mistake, because if you keep them talking, you know what will happen? And I've seen this happen, and it's happened to me in my early days, is you're like, oh, this is going great. Oh yeah, your kids? Oh yeah, I've got kids, or whatever it might be, and blah, 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 blah. And 15 minutes go by and suddenly they go, okay, yeah, anyway, should we get on with this? And you're like, oh yeah, of course. You've lost the frame. You fucked it, right? You have to be the first one to say, let's get on with this, because that shows that you haven't got time. You've done this before, all the stuff that I've talked about, and you're nice and calm in your transition, right? The second way, and this says, yeah, then pivot with calm authority. Awesome. Let's get right into it. Here's how I'd like to run today's call so we make the most of your time. Bang. You're considering their time, right? Business leaders, especially when you deal with someone who's a very, very direct CEO, high-powered CEO, they love their time, right? We all do. So if you show that you've got consideration for that, you're calmly settling into the call, and it's beautiful. And then to top things off, really to lay it down in the first step, is you transition into say, right, so shall we get, let's get on with this. Let's get right into it. And here's how I'd like to run today's call, how I normally do this. Again, showing I've done this many times, right? So what I'd like to do is we're going to do 3 things today. Number 1, understand where you're at right now, walk through the process, key results we're targeting, and map out clear next steps together, whether we decide to work together or not. Is that cool? How does that sound to you? And then you want to ask a very key question, which is not on the screen. So I missed that, sorry. Which is, would you like to add anything to that quick agenda? Now, a lot of people will say, well, when you're having just a normal chat, not a sales call, maybe you're doing onboarding, or maybe you're just catching up with someone, on a business level, should we have an agenda and all? Isn't it a bit too formal? No, it's not. It shows that you know what the hell you're talking about. You value their time. You value your own time, more importantly, actually, because you're busy, you've got shit to do, and you like to structure things. Guess what people love as business leaders? Structure. Because structure shows you're not going to go on and on. You have a plan, and leaders always have a plan. Experts always have a plan, right? So this is the key thing again. Imagine that spinal surgeon, you walk in, and they're just like, yeah, so, let's, we're going to talk about, like, tell me how things going and blah. Whereas imagine a spinal surgeon coming in and saying, right, cool. How you being? Perfect. All right, let's get straight to it. Here's what I want to do today, right? I want to do 2 things or 3 things or whatever it might be. Now, I normally stick with 3 things as an agenda. Because, well, first of all, it's easy to cover 3 things, right? And it shows, 3 is a magic number anyway, I find. So I always try and stick to 3 things, and you can flesh those out as much as you want. But 3 is easy to digest, and it's just, as easy as 1, 2, 3, as they say. So what is the key outcome? Well, they're settled, you're settled, you've claimed authority before the pitch even starts or the conversation even starts, and your measured, relaxed, unshakable tone establishes that you're not selling, you're leading. And as a quick key point here, before we move on, when we do sales calls, on the first call that we do, I train all of our sales guys, right? We never, ever, ever pitch on that call, which means we let them know as well that there will be no sale on this call. Is that cool with you, by the way, before we continue? Because I can't possibly, sort of price this up, pitch this to you without understanding your business. And quite frankly, I haven't earned the right to put any prices on the table or ask for any money unless I really understand what you're doing. And also, we don't work with every business. Genuinely, we only have a few spots every month, which is how we operate. So I want to make sure that we're right for you, you're right for us, because we can't help every single business, right? So I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions and get into it. But I guarantee you, I'll leave you better off than I found you with 2 or 3 key things that you can implement, whether you work with us or not. Does that sound good? Okay, and they're going to say yes, of course, because you've shown you're in control, you have an agenda, you have a plan, and they're going to be nicely into your frame. Number 2 then, you want to demonstrate that you're confident. This one's obvious, right? But I don't just mean confident in how you speak. I mean confident in the process, in the results that you can deliver. So you need to show that you have 150% trust in your system. This is otherwise known as conviction, but I think conviction's overused, right? There's a lack in understanding of what conviction means for some people. They think, oh, it's about the, about the product or whatever. No, it's about results. Because the product should be obvious, right? And you need to demonstrate that. Again, you can't fake this. They're going to feel it. They're going to sense it. And so confidence isn't just about personal charisma, like I said, because anyone can do this. I've seen the biggest introverts be the best salespeople because all they're doing is showing absolute certainty in your methodology or in their methodology, in their process to deliver results, right? And so language that might convey certainty are things like, we know, the data shows, as a fact, I use the word fact all the time. Because I know that we've got, case studies and data and actual numbers. People love numbers, always use numbers. Never, oh, we got this client, results or they were happy. Well, that doesn't mean shit. What means shit is we went from 50K to 500K in 8 months by doing this process, in the fitness niche, in the e-com industry, well, fitness could be e-com too, but, you get the point, or in the medical space. This is what we've done, and we've dealt with people that are similar to your business. In fact, I was just talking to, let's say you're talking to a fitness business for now, an e-com fitness business that sells, portable, the treadmill desks, right? The cool little things, you may have seen them, they're portable, they're light. And it's like, it's funny because I just dealt with a similar business last week. They were although not portable, but they sold treadmills. They sold exercise bikes, and it's a very similar process. So I'm very excited to show you the results they got, as well as countless others. But they, it sounds like they're in the same boat as you. But obviously, we'll discover that as we go into this. Does that sound good? Awesome. And so, that's generally how they feel. So, or how to get them to feel that you're confident and you know what you're doing, because they feel guided, not convinced, but carried. Because you're not trying to convince anyone. No one ever tries to convince anyone of data when it's just a fact. You don't need to. You just say, here's what we did. Here's how it worked. Bang. That's a fact, right? And you move on. So that's there's no point continuing any conversation unless you can do that. Now, you might be thinking, well, if it's an onboarding call, well, you're still showing confidence in results, right? Showing that you're confident in what you do. And if it's just a general conversation for business, you can also just say, hey, I've done this so many times before. I remember having this conversation and that conversation, because it shows that you're showing situational dominance, right? And the fact that you've done this a million times. And I'll be saying that a million times as I go through this presentation, because that's what shows, your shit. Okay, step 3 is excitement. You want to show that you're excited and you have energy in the results. So the first one is confidence in the system to deliver the results for sure. But then when you show the excitement, the energy in the results is slightly different, right? Because this means you're kind of future pacing them. Yeah, you're saying stuff like, I'm really excited to get this rolling because what I've noticed is that you've got this problem and we've solved it. We've solved it many, many times before. And I'm excited because I think what I've seen and what you're saying, it demonstrates that we're going to be able to get off to the races quickly. And we can definitely help you, I think. Obviously, you need to make sure you can. But if you can and you've got a qualified lead, or a business, then show that excitement. Obviously, you can't fake this. If it's not real, you should disqualify them, and don't waste your time or theirs. But if you're genuinely getting into it, when you find commonalities with people, you ever had that before? Oh, you're talking to someone at a bar or on holiday somewhere. You're not really paying much attention to them, and then suddenly they're like, yeah, well, because I grew up in Atlanta, and you're like, oh, no way, you grew up in Atlanta? Oh, which neighborhood? You get what I mean? See that excitement? Because they've demonstrated something, they've qualified themselves. Now you're going deeper in. You're sitting forward in your seat, and things start to kick off. So the first thing you want to do is anchor to tangible outcomes. So what's exciting is how quickly you'll see traction once this starts rolling. And again, never ever hype or bullshit without substance, right? Always connect enthusiasm to real measurable results. And this is a key point because I've seen a lot of people try and sell stuff where they fake that enthusiasm, and you cannot do it because again, they're going to sense it and smell it a mile off, right? Especially if they're high-powered CEOs, they've had millions of conversations. They've been pitched trillions of times, right? So they know this, they might not know how, but they know and feel when something is not real because they've done it so many times before, and they've probably been lied to a lot of times before. So a common example is when I'm training the sales guys in our company over the last sort of 10 years, is as an example, it's, because we record our calls and we listen back and we do like a hot seat thing, right? And what's funny is a lot of times when you have a new person starting, and it's not their fault, we have to train this out of them. But when someone says, oh, I'm in the e-com niche, they'll be like, oh my God, that's amazing. Really? I mean, is that measured? Is that warranted? Is that sort of proportionate to what they're telling you? No. They're in e-com, so fucking what? It's not like a wow thing. It might be like, oh, that's cool. Cool is appropriate. Wow, that's amazing. Oh, wow, I didn't realize that. Is not. Right? It's not proportionate at all. And so as an example, if they say something like, we went from 0 to 100 million in 1 year, yeah, then you can say, oh my God, really? That's incredible. Wow, fantastic result. Right? So things like that. You can also pair logic with vision. So combine data and steps with results and momentum and the emotional payoff. So this dual approach creates positive anticipation. Again, you'll notice what I say here, grounded in reality, right? Just like we said here, never hype without substance. So if you want to write any words down, these are very important because that's what shows that you're a real, authentic person who doesn't fuck around or bullshit, right? And finally, create belief, not just interest. If you do these things right, you will demonstrate genuine excitement about their potential outcomes, backed by your process. They start to believe with you, not just listen to what you have to say. And again, you're talking with them, not at them. Because if you build that, that calmness, that confidence, you'll generate that excitement naturally if you follow those steps. Okay, so 2 more steps. Step 4 is showing that you're sharp. Now, this is key, right? Hopefully you would have done this anyway by the way that we're carrying the call, right? Using the steps and the framework. But you want to prove that you're mentally alert, mentally agile, and tracking every detail. Sharpness signals that you're fully present, you're engaged, impossible to rattle. And again, it's not about having charisma or being able to control conversations. It's got nothing to do with that. When I say rattle, I mean, you just know what you're doing, right? You just know what you're doing. Again, a spinal surgeon, do they have to be charismatic? No, they just need to know the fucking job and be able to fix my back better than anyone else because they know the problem better than anyone else, right? They can be calm, they can be, reclusive. I don't care as long as they know their shit. And they're never going to be rattled because they've done it a million times. And what they're likely to say if you do try and rattle them is, well, look, bro, you can go to someone else to get your back sorted. I know my shit. This is what I've done. And it's as simple as that, right? So it's the quality that makes clients feel safe. They know nothing will slip through the cracks when they're working with you because you're sharp. And an example of this and how to demonstrate sharpness, and this is very important. You have to break flow to confirm clarity, right? I do this all the time and I train my guys to do this as well because a lot of people fall under this, make this error and fall into this trap, I was going to say, is on a call, they feel like they need to agree with everything, which is, again, disagreement is very important, but that, you can check out my 60K in 6 months video to see more detail about how I, encourage actively disagreement or many other videos on the channel here. But this is so important. You should do this in every conversation, no matter what. You should always break flow to confirm clarity. Don't be afraid. If you don't understand something, ask the fucking question. Simple, right? So you might be like, look, let me just pause you real quick. So let's say I've gone through the intro, the agenda, like I did before and I demonstrated. So I'd be like, okay, so Stephen, Peter, Susan, Barbara, is there anything you'd like to add to the agenda? No, there isn't. Okay, perfect. And I'll be like, right. So first and foremost, tell me, what are you doing? Because we do digital services around content marketing, right? To drive organic traffic and sales. But I'll be like, so tell me what you're doing around content right now. Right? And they're going, blah, 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 blah. And then they might be like, well, what's your process? And I might go into it. And as I'm talking, I might be like, and of course you've got to ask a lot more questions, but let's say it's my turn to talk and they say, what do you do? And I'll be like, right. So we do 3 things. Number 1, we research the questions people ask before making a buying decision about your service, your product, your website, or your business, right? And there are thousands of these underserved questions out there, actual questions people research before buying. And then number two, we then answer those questions in the form of 8 different formats: videos, both long and short, reels, articles, podcast, interview style. We've got infographics, we've got flipbooks, we've also got blogs, right? And ebooks and things like that. And what we do then in those 8 formats is repurpose to answer those questions, not regurgitated, completely unique content, and then distribute that to 300 sites. So the content actually gets seen. So we can drive organic buyers who are researching your products or services, no matter where they're searching, back to your website and your business so they can make that purchase. So what I would do at that point is I'm of course going to go, you know what, let me just pause there. I know I threw a lot at you. But Susan, does that make sense so far? Just want to make sure, right? And this demonstrates you're tracking their understanding, not just delivering a monologue. And what I often do is use tactical vulnerability, which is like, you know, and it's not faking anything. It's just like, hey, I know I'm not perfect and you might not have understood that. So Susan, I know I threw a lot at you. If you noticed, that's what I said. You might not have caught everything. Sorry, I have a habit of getting very excited and you know, throwing everything in. But let's just pause there. Like, does that make sense so far? Is there any questions around that? No? Okay, awesome. And you move on. They respect that because they're like, you're not just talking at them. What am I doing? I'm talking with them. And there's no, like, you know, that is trust 101, right? No one, like, again, if you imagine the parent that just shouts and screams at a kid for an hour rather than asks what's going on and let's talk about this, it becomes a different thing. It's like the visual, you may have seen it, the classic visual of, you know, cops do this all the time. They're sitting across the table interrogating, and then they go, you know what, let's just break this down. They take their chair and they walk all the way around, sit next to the person and go, let's just have a conversation, right? On the same side versus opposite. Maintaining tight tempo is any questions before we move on. I've already did that. It's natural, right? It's like unconsciously competent at this stage. But you can keep the conversation moving, but conversational, and avoid long, unbroken streams of information. But here's the thing. Sometimes you might need to, you know, relay information in that way. Completely fine. But just, again, break the flow in the middle of the streams of information to ask if they get it. Also, you're going to watch for engagement signs. So micro signals of confusion or disconnect and address them immediately. So your alertness builds their confidence in your attention to detail. And I do this all the time. Even now, I'll be like, hey, you know, if you guys were watching this live or you were part of a live call, I'd be like, look, again, just before we move on, does that make sense? So every section that you're going through, if you have to do every slide, it might be an overkill, but use your intuition, but go through every couple of slides or every key section and be like, hey, so, and again, I'm going to keep asking you this. Don't worry. I just want to make sure you're following along, because if you're not following along, you know, we're going to miss the most important thing, and I don't want you to miss the opportunity here. So if it's cool, I'll ask again, do you get it? Or no, you go, excuse me. Okay. Protein shake is coming up there. All right. So next is critical insight. So just to finish this off, so sharpness isn't about speed. It's about precision. It's about data. It's about understanding, and it's about taking, you know, the comprehension that you have. So you don't just look switched on, you are switched on because you're understanding, you're engaged and completely in control of the conversation's direction and pacing. And finally then, step 5, just to wrap this up, is you want to demonstrate that you're the expert. This should be obvious. But a lot of people try and get to step 5. Have you ever had this? You know, you might have felt this. It's almost like everybody wants to be confident first, but confidence comes last. Because before you're confident, you've got to be competent, you've got to be courageous or whatever it might be. I think that one's from Dan Sullivan, I think. He had a framework of the 4 C's or something. But yeah, as in everybody wants to get to the end result first. But of course, you're just like a tennis player, you're not going to be, you know, you're not going to win the Wimbledon or the US Open in year 1. You might win it in year 5, but you've got to be playing tennis for a long time. Imagine starting and going, picking up the racket, I want to be the champion. You can't, right? Everybody wants that, but you can't. You have to earn that right. Just like you have to earn the right to be confident through competence, through, just going day in, day out, working hard and committing to the process, right? Same thing here. If you want to be the expert, everyone's like, oh, you want to demonstrate you're the expert. Well, how the fuck do you do that? Well, that's what I mean. That comes last, because what you want to do first is you want to show you're calm, you want to show you're confident, you want to show you're excited, you want to show that you're sharp. And if you do those things right, you're going to begin to be accepted and viewed as the expert anyway. But this is where you finish this off and wrap it up nicely so that you're beginning to be viewed as the expert, but then this is, signed, sealed, delivered by the end of this slide. So what happens here is you're demonstrating that depth that commands respect, right? So you're revealing your knowledge through questions, not boasting. Now, I always say, right, and when I'm training people about this, I always say, you're actually selling through questions. So your questions, people think, oh, I need to ask questions and then I need to sell. No. If the mastery comes when your questions themselves are doing the selling for you in terms of showing your shit, building trust and all that kind of stuff, right? For example, if I'm talking to a business, I'll be like, tell me about, your content. What are you doing for content right now? Well, we're doing some blogs on our site and we're doing some SEO and stuff like that. But, mainly blogs on site. We're trying to do some YouTube video stuff and a little bit on Instagram. Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Instagram's cool. And so how are the results going for you at the moment? Well, it could be better as always, but the results are limited, I would say. The blog doesn't seem to be driving too much traffic. And the videos and stuff, they're getting views here or there. Same with Instagram. Okay. So should we take a quick look? And then I might bring up something like a tool that shows traffic and pages and, backlinks or whatever it might be, right? Whatever your tool is, whatever you're selling. So for us, with content, organic traffic's key. So I might bring up some organic traffic stats using a tool and keyword stats and say, okay, what's interesting is, and I might analyze that and say, so you're saying you're getting some traction, but your traffic's actually down. So I'm just wondering, like, are the blogs actually, you're saying they're working? Are they bringing in traffic at all? Or why would you say there's a dip? They're going to say blah, blah, blah. Can you see what I'm doing with this? I'm not asking questions just for the sake of it. A lot of salespeople are like, oh, build us, have lots of questions or whatever and dig deep. It's like, this sounds great in principle, but how the fuck do you do that properly? Whereas I'm like, just be genuinely curious. When you ask a question, dig into that question, but actually own it, feel it, want it. Get into it, right? Just like you're speaking to a stranger. Like if they say, oh, I went to Alaska and I did this. Wow. Okay. Alaska. That's like, I'm genuinely curious because I want to know. Right. And that's why empathy is hand in hand with, with being effective at having conversations like this, because you actually care. You actually are very excited about what they're talking about. This is what makes the expert, right? Yes or no? When people say I geek out about SEO or I geek out about YouTube ads or whatever it might be, or spinal surgery for that matter, they love talking about it because they're just immersed, right? So that's what this shows, that you're immersed. Not that you're good at asking questions and following up with it. Yeah, anyone could do that, right? But you're actually, the true expert will ask questions that no one else does. Why? Because they're like, wow, that's really interesting, right? And it's like, oh, so you've got a YouTube video channel then. Interesting, okay. Again, we've seen a lot of people who have YouTube channels, but what they'll do is they'll post videos once a day for like 2-3 months. And then it becomes once a week. Then it becomes once every 3 months. And they're like, oh, yeah, man, tell me about it, right? Why? Because I know that that's what they're going through. But again, if you ask these questions, right, you'll build that expertise through the questions themselves, right? And this reveals blind spots with precision. So it's like, got it. Are you tracking what percentage of that traffic converts? What a great question. This would obviously follow something like, cool. So, you're saying you're getting that traffic through. And then I'll be like, so what percentage of that traffic then converts on the site? Do you know what your conversion rate is? Right? Well, yeah, kind of. If they don't, guess who's the expert? Bang, you're already winning the frame here. But you're winning the frame because you're asking questions where they're like, holy shit, this is brilliant. They're like, this guy clearly knows this stuff if he's asking these questions, because they likely wouldn't have been asked these questions before, because someone is really, really digging in deep. So questions like these demonstrate you operate at a deeper level than they expected. You're seeing dimensions that you're not even selling yet, right? You're just understanding. And that's the beautiful thing. In some cases, I've had calls where 35 minutes have gone by. And I've gone, amazing, thank you so much, I'm asking questions, and they've stopped me and gone, wow, you know what, we're out of time almost, you haven't even told me what you do. And I'm like, oh yeah, wow, I haven't, right? But I don't need to. 35 minutes, imagine. They're already in, right? They're already in because they're like, holy shit, this guy's asking, to the point where I'll ask questions like, so what's the annual revenue of the business, if you're comfortable sharing that? Or how much traffic converts first of all, and then what's the AOV, the average order value of that traffic that converts? This much. Then I might ask a question like, well, what's the net profit on that? Now they're thinking, holy shit, like this guy, right? Do you get what I mean? So that's the key thing. You can also add micro insights, like dropping practical, actionable insights as you go. Not fluffy theory. I do this a lot. And gently correct false assumptions and back every point with logic. As an example, recently I had a phone call, had a conversation with a sizable ecom business. They're doing about 15 to 20 million a year. So they're doing okay, nice, decent size. And the CEO is like, well, again, I was like, so what are you doing for content? Looked at the blog. And I was like, wow. And he was like, well, it's a good blog, right? And I'm like, what do you mean? How much time are you spending on this? He's like, well, the team write it and then I review it and end up rewriting big parts of it. And then I allow them to publish. And I'm like, yeah, but you've got like 50 to 100 posts here. You do that every time? Yeah, it's my business. I have to. I'm like, yeah, but you're not a writer. You're a CEO. You should be leading from the top, not getting involved in the middle. Why are you hiring these people and wasting that time? And he's like, well, you get it. I have to do that. And I'm like, okay, not really, because that's the whole idea. Like you wouldn't, if you have to do every part of every business, then you're never going to grow, right? Because you should be sort of leading the strategy and overall growth, and the sort of path for that. And then I sort of challenged him on that, but that was a bit personal, so I didn't go too deep. But then I said, no worries, Fran, totally get it. Let's get into this real quick, because I want to know, like, and then he's like, well, tell me what's wrong with the blog. I go, if I can I be frank with you? Is that cool? And he's like, yeah. Business owners love that. They're like, oh, of course, 100%. Like, finally, someone is going to tell me how it is. And I was like, okay, so the blog is absolutely terrible. Really? Yes, it is. You want to know why? There's two main things that are wrong with this blog that are holding you back, that are de-indexing your pages from Google. And then I show the traffic and say, as an example, you see the traffic here? It's off a cliff, right? And he's like, yeah, I know. That's why I'm here. And I'll be like, so then you should know that the blog is not working, right? Anyway, let me ask you, like, do you want to know what those two things are? Yes, absolutely. What are they? Well, number one, the headline is absolutely terrible, because let me ask you, who the hell is going to type this question into Google because it doesn't answer any questions, right? It might be the top 10 trends of whatever he was selling. I can't reveal the niche in 2020 because he's a client, but in 2026, he's paying us £6 a month, right? So I don't want to lose that one. But in 2026, I'm like, no one searches for the top 10 trends in this specific industry. Someone's searching for a problem they have, how they might be able to increase their lung capacity after smoking for 10 years, or, how they can lose 10 pounds after having a baby, and which exercises are the best for it. If you're selling exercise bikes, for instance, right? Or what are the best exercise bikes that make the lowest amount of noise in an apartment, right? This is what I'm talking about. But and then I said to him, have you written content like that? And he's like, oh, wow, okay, yeah, fuck, I get it now. That makes sense. And I'm like, but you have to do that at scale, because that's what the biggest businesses are doing and blowing up their organic traffic. Well, businesses like you are writing completely terrible stuff, or you're over leveraging AI. And, we've seen businesses do that as well. Here's an example. And so I'm giving lots of theory, not theory, sorry, lots of actual insights that are built on, and based on reality and data. And at that point, I'll be like, right, anyway, sorry, man, let's get back into it. So I've got a few more questions I really want to ask. But at this point, they're in control. They in terms of, I'm in control, but I don't want to make that sound manipulative, because it's not about that. But, they're in your control. They are. And by that, I mean, you're the expert. You know what you're doing. They understand. They're falling into the frame, and they're like, wow, like they're ready to buy, And so the transformation is they stop seeing you as a rep and they start treating you as their strategist, in other words, known as the expert, right? And once you establish those 5 things, you're going to be good to go. So really quickly, a super quick recap here, putting all 5 elements together. Number 1, you want to show you're calm, using the warm rapport switch into structured transition, into a clear 3-step agenda. You then want to show you're confident using certain language, but you're confident about the results and they feel guided by an expert system, and you're confident in the process because you've done it a million times. And then again, this is that quiet confidence. Like if you get a plumber or something and you're like, well, what about this and that? And they're like, when they just sigh and go, look, bro, I'm too old for this. I've been doing this for too long. But I'll explain to you, right? So I do this every day. This is what I do. This is that. And then you're like almost like, oh, sorry. Yeah. You take it because you know they're the expert and they're confident in what they're doing. You want to then show the excitement. So you want to show you're excited. You're genuinely enthused. But it's anchored to tangible outcomes and it's proportionate, their answers to your questions. In other words, logic paired with vision, and they're starting to believe alongside you. And then you push to sharpness. You want to show your sharp as attack, bang, bang, bang. Checking understanding, having a tight tempo, fully present and tracking every detail, and showing genuine curiosity. They trust your mental engagement. And finally, if you do all these things right, bang, 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 you finally get to expertise. Whereas again, like I said before, everybody wants to start from this, but it's impossible. You need to work on this. And also this whole process, it's not going to turn you into a conversation dynamo in 2 seconds, right? You have to work at it, but if you implement this as a structure, I'm telling you now, your conversations will flow better. But in the first 10 minutes, you have to establish these 5 things. You have to do it. If you do that, you'll have a way easier call. Resistance will have gone, melted, and now they're listening to what you have to say. If you don't do these 5 things, they're not listening to what you have to say. You're not going to get into the meat and bones of what you do. You can have the best product in the world, but if you don't show these 5 things, you're gonna likely lose, right? And so the expertise is then you build on this by asking strategic questions, offering practical micro insights and gentle corrections, and you've become their trusted advisor, not just a vendor. And a big common mistake, again, I see people make is, in sales, is, you should just ask questions. You should, but when I said the 35 minutes that I was on a call happens all the time where I didn't even talk about what I do. Was I offering gentle insights in between that though? You damn right I did, right? As we were talking, if they're saying, well, we do meta tags and schema on our site and stuff like this. What do you think about that? And I went, well, can I be frank? My classic line, they're like, yes, obviously. And I'm like, it's a complete waste of fucking time, right? Because the way content has changed in 2025 to 26, Google used to rank stuff 18 months ago, which is decimating now. It's not even going to look at, because if everyone can do content in the same way using AI, everyone has the same advantage, which means no one has the same advantage, which means Google now has raised its bar, and you have to abide by that. If you're not producing top shit content, right, or top class hot shit content, then you're going to suffer. Google is not going to rank you, which is why traffic is falling left, right, and center, and which is probably why you're on the call. Because ultimately, SEO is dead. It's been taken behind the garden shed and shot. And I hope I don't offend you is what I normally say, because there might be an SEO guy. But they know this by now. And I'll say, look, and the reason I say that is because people are still obsessing about meta tags on page with SEO or schema, when really that's going to move the needle how much? Tiny, tiny amount. When they're not doing the basics right, which could move the needle by 20, 30, 50, 60%, right? 80-20 rule almost. And you know what that is? Answering fucking questions. Your content is not answering the questions that your market, your audience is actually researching before they make a buying decision. And then you're not posting that on every platform in every format. That's step 1. Like the Google CEO said recently, you have to be doing things and approaching things in a cross-platform, multi-channel way to stand a chance with content now. But then you have to be answering questions. And if you do that, Google loves you, because it shows that you give a shit about the market. You've got, you're not just copy and pasting from AI. You're leveraging AI, 60, 70%, no problem, but you're tweaking because it shows you give a shit about the audience. Right? And, people who just copy and paste from AI, it's just crazy. And you can watch a video I did on our channel there about Jasper AI, but I won't go into that now. But anyway, the point is, when I go into that, now they're paying attention, because I'm giving, we said gentle insights. I'm a little bit more direct. You can do it in your own style, but I know what I'm talking about, so I can say that. And be like, well, why aren't you answering the questions? And then they might say, well, okay, well, and I'm like, let's look at your competition. And this one always kills it. I'm like, let's look at your competition. Who is a pain in your butt as your competitor? Who are you looking at thinking, how the fuck are they doing this? Can we break it down? Do you know what they're doing? Because they're killing us. I don't know what they're doing. Then I look at their traffic. Their traffic is typically 10x or something, 5 to 10x when we do this with prospects. And then I might say, okay, well, you know what, and typically if their organic traffic is up, especially now, because Google will not let that happen unless they're doing the content which answers the questions and gets it everywhere, right? Serving the market, serving the audience, serving the demand, right? All that kind of stuff. That's a foundation. If they're not doing that now, and by the way, if you're not doing that now and you have a business or whatever, please do that, right? In whatever way you can. But anyway, the point being, I'm like, what do you think they're doing? I don't know. That's why, I'm on this call. You tell me. Okay, perfect. Well, let's look at it. And when we look at their site and we look at their blog, guess what their blogs are doing? Answering fucking questions over and over and over and over again. Whereas, the person we're speaking to is doing generic bullshit content. These guys are caring about the audience. right? These guys are really going into depth. If they're a gut specialist, it's like, how to increase this exact strain of bacteria and the top 10 foods that do that. Wow. Is someone going to search for that? 100%, right? Is someone going to search for, let's say the top, we can say like, oat flour versus tapioca starch for baking a cake. Now we're talking. Or even better, oat flour versus tapioca starch for baking, a red velvet cake. Wow. Then you've got gâteaux, then you've got chocolate cakes, and you've got cheesecakes. I mean, it just goes on and on and on, right? Especially for someone who's gluten intolerant is the whole point there with a gut specialist. And then it brings them into the buyer journey with all of these different pieces of content, answering all these different questions. And at this point, the guy's like, wow, I get it. Yeah, you're right. I'm not even doing that. Geez, okay. And that, you know what they're thinking at this point? How can should we get started? Like, can you do this for us? And how does it look? What, buyer questions, right? But anyway, even at that point, I'll be like, right, anyway, let's get back into this. Let me ask you, sorry, I got sidetracked there. I get excited. So let me ask you again. So, okay, let's talk about the paid ad side of things. And then the conversation, obviously, will move along, right? Anyway, there's your 5-step framework or authority framework, right? In order to win that trust, lower resistance in the first 10 minutes of a call, you need to demonstrate these 5 things. And if you do that correctly, you're going to be good to go, because the common mistakes that kill authority, I'll finish on this, is skipping the agenda. If you skip the agenda, it shows you don't know what you're doing and you don't have a plan. Never do that, right? Always have a 3-step agenda. In my opinion, you can add more if you like, but three is a magic number. Using weak language like I think or maybe versus fact, yes, data, what we've done a million times, right? Monologuing without pauses. So talking 10 minutes straight will kill sharpness and engagement. Break flow regularly. It doesn't matter if you're bombard them, no problem. But break that bombardment up into short bursts, right? And check in with them. And even apologize. Call yourself out and say, man, I know I'm bombarding you. Just by saying that, you've dealt with the objection. Now they're like, oh, he understands. Perfect. Versus, fucking hell, this guy can talk. And you're like, listen, you might be thinking I could talk, right? Like, my God, I know. Tell me about it. But I'm so excited about this. Now I'm off the hook. Now they're thinking, oh, okay, fine. You know what I mean? You've addressed the objection. Leading with features, not questions. So questions are everything. Ask about metrics. Ask about specific things. Talk about numbers and challenge their assumptions. And then false enthusiasm without substance. Never get excited about something which doesn't make sense, because they'll sense it. And never show, and a common example, like I showed earlier, is getting excited about how they've said, oh, we've been in business for 20 years. And you going, oh my God, really? Wow, that's unbelievable. Is it really that unbelievable? It might be impressive, but the tone doesn't, and the words don't match that. It needs to be proportionate to the actual thing. So it could be something like 20 years is a long time. Yeah, awesome. Solid job. I'm not as excited, but it's proportionate. Whereas if they said, oh, well, we've just started a new product line, last week. Oh my God, really? It's like, you see that with people who are not seasoned or don't understand the cues. Whereas if they say we made $10 million in last month, wow, fuck me, that's incredible, because it actually is, right? And always anchor excitement to specific tangible outcomes your process actually delivers. Even with what we do, don't show overexcitement unless you see something. So if I say, oh my God, like your blog is terrible and I'm excited because I know we can fix this for you. Here's how we've done it before. Here's how we've done it before. That's exactly what we do. And, I'm getting excited because we've worked with businesses exactly like you at the same revenue level, at the same net profit level, spending very similar on paid ads. Like, you are our ICP, our ideal customer profile. That commands excitement, right? But if you're not sure you can deliver the results, then don't get overly excited about it. Okay, so just to really quickly wrap this up, I've been talking for far too long now, and this video is going on a little bit longer than I expected. But your authority switch checklist is use this framework, take a screenshot. But if you want this checklist, then just put it in the comments below. And we'll get you something across. Okay. Again, if you want this checklist, put it in the comments below, and I will get the team to send you this. So you've got the calm, your confidence, the excitement, the sharpness, and the expertise. What each one delivers, and if you master these 5 switches and watch how quickly you transform the way that you operate. Anyway, thanks for watching. That's the 5 switch checklist, and I think we've wrapped up the main body of this now. All right. Okay, so if you like that breakdown, be sure to watch my other video on this channel titled 60K in 6 months, where I break down the entire flow of how we land 100 to $150,000 clients for the year in our own agency. Thank you very much.